Welcome to World News coming to you live from Algiers. I'm Miriam Zian and these are the headlines. On the 693rd day of the war of extermination in Gaza, dozens of martyrs and wounded in horrific massacres that the occupation continues to commit. Abu Ubaidah warns the enemy's plans to occupy Gaza City will be disastrous for its military and political leadership, and Turkey has decided to sever its economic and trade ties with Israel. Coming up, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expresses concern over the ongoing attacks on Al-Fashir, and the Sudanese authorities confirm that more than 1 million people are besieged in the city, while the United Nations calls for urgent aid to save over 30 million Sudanese. On developments regarding Iran's nuclear file, the European Troika urges Tehran to reconsider its position. Araghchi says the European decision will have grave consequences, and Russia and China condemn the reimposition of sanctions on Tehran, stressing the step is counterproductive. Zelensky emphasizes that talks on security guarantees must be held at the leaders' level and urges Trump to take part. Russia warns that Kiev's proposed security guarantees are biased and dangerous, while Trump says he is unhappy with the developments in Ukraine. Hello and welcome back to your nightly news. First in our file, Palestinian news agency citing medical sources in Gaza reported that 79 Palestinians were killed and others injured by Zionist occupation forces gunfire, which targeted areas in the Gaza Strip since dawn. Palestinian sources in Gaza hospitals reported that a series of airstrikes on homes and displaced persons stands in several areas of the Strip, along with the targeting of Palestinians. The occupation forces gunfire resulted in the death of 79 Palestinians and the injury of several others since dawn. This comes alongside intensive aerial and ground bombardment across the entire Strip. The mass displacement of Palestinians from northern or northeastern Gaza City began on Friday evening. Zionist forces ramped up their attacks from both the north and south, launching airstrikes that destroyed entire neighborhoods. The bombardment has forced thousands to flee with no place to seek refuge from the relentless onslaught. Nabil Khazini has the report.
During time of war, refuge is the final hope, the last instinct for survival. But in Gaza, even that refuge is being stripped away. The occupation made of Gaza a cage with no escape. No place is beyond the reach of bombs. No shadow deep enough to hide from the thundering sky. People are fleeing, but where to go?
What should we do? Do we stay here to die? To be broken? My 2 brothers died. My mother was martyred. My cousins were killed before my eyes. What should we do? We keep moving from one place to another until God above looks upon us.
As of today, most of Gaza's over 2 million residents have been displaced multiple times, with entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble. The air is thick with dust, the ground scared by the relentless pounding of bombs. The occupation has intensified its assault, unleashing one of the heaviest bombardments since the war began. Airstrikes rain down, tearing apart what little remains. Now, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees is sounding the alarm. The ongoing bombardment, they warn, could force up to 1 million more people to flee their homes, adding to the already staggering wave of displacement.
Every hour today counts. The more we wait, the more people will be dying. Either they will die because of the military operation and the bombardment, or they die because they could not be assisted in time and they are silently dying because of hunger, or they are even dying because they try to desperately seek for food.
As families move, uncertain and desperate, they carry only the weight of what they have lost and the uncertainty of where they can go next. But in Gaza, survival is not about finding a place to hide. It's about finding the strength to move forward.
The spokesperson for Hamas's armed wing, Abu Ubaida, warned that Israel's plan to occupy Gaza would be disastrous for its political and military leadership, saying its forces would pay with soldiers' blood. In a statement posted on his official Telegram account, Abu Ubaida vowed that more Israeli soldiers would be captured and stressed that Al-Qassam fighters remain on high alert, ready to inflict heavy losses on invading forces.
The enemy's criminal plans to occupy Gaza will bring calamity upon its political and military leadership, and its army will pay the price with the blood of its soldiers. By God's will, this will increase the chances of capturing new soldiers. Our fighters are on full alert, highly prepared, and in high spirits. They will present exceptional examples of heroism and bravery, and will teach the invaders harsh lessons with God's help. We will preserve the enemy's captives as much as we are able, and they will remain with our fighters in the battlefields and front lines under the same risks and living conditions. We will announce the name, picture, and proof of death of every captive killed by the aggression.
And Turkey has announced the complete severance of its economic and trade ties with the Zionist entity and the closure of its airspace to Israeli planes. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said that the decision comes as a result of Israel's continued massacres against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and its aggressive policies extending from the Gaza Strip to Al-Quds, the West Bank, Syria, Iran, and Lebanon. Hakan Fidan affirmed that Israeli plans to continue to occupy all the lands of Gaza and that Israel aims to eliminate the two-state solution with unlimited U.S. support, as he put it.
İsrail'le ticaretimizi tamamen kestik.
We have completely cut off our trade with Israel. We have closed our ports to Israeli ships. We do not allow Turkish ships to go to Israeli ports. I emphasize, no other country has completely cut off its trade with Israel. We do not allow container ships carrying weapons and ammunition to Israel to enter our ports, nor do we allow aircraft to enter our airspace.
Girmesine izin vermiyoruz.
Britain has decided to ban Israeli officials from participating in its largest defense trade exhibition due to the occupation's ongoing aggression against the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian news agency Wafa reported that the government of Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced in July that it would recognize the state of Palestine unless the occupation takes significant concrete steps to end the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. It added that Starmer stressed the need for a comprehensive plan to end the tragedy in the Strip and reach a lasting settlement. Malaysia has renewed its call on the international community to suspend the Zionist entity's membership in the UN and impose sanctions against it. Malaysian Foreign Minister Muhammad Hassan said the time has come to suspend Israel's membership in the UN General Assembly, urging all countries to impose sanctions to restrict the flow of weapons to the occupation. He also noted that the vast majority of international community has clearly called for preventing Israel from carrying out its plan to destroy and depopulate the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian presidency expressed regret and surprise at the U.S. State Department's decision to deny visas to members of the Palestinian Authority ahead of next September's UN General Assembly conference on the two-state solution. In a statement, it said the move violates international law and the UN headquarters agreement, stressing that Palestine holds observer status at the UN. The presidency called on Washington to reconsider and reverse the decision, which bars PLO and PA officials from taking part in the General Assembly's proceedings.
This statement attributed to the State Department was just released. It was brought to my attention just about half an hour ago. We will see exactly what it means and how it applies to any of our delegation, and we will respond accordingly.
The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees warned that any further escalation would only worsen the suffering and push more civilians toward catastrophe amid the ongoing famine. In the post published on X on Friday, the agency said that the occupation's continuous bombardment of the Gaza Strip and its evacuation orders are forcing entire families to leave their homes once again amid fear and destruction. It stressed that the intensification of Israel's military operation in Gaza City would expose nearly 1 million people to new forced displacement. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed concern over the continued attacks by the Rapid Support Forces on the city of Al-Fasher in North Darfur, Sudan. UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric said in a statement that there is growing concern over the risks of serious violations of international humanitarian law, as well as violations and abuses of international human rights, including ethnically motivated abuses. He added that UN efforts, together with its partners to deliver humanitarian aid to Al-Fasher, continue to face obstacles. The Sudanese Foreign Ministry reported that more than 1 million civilians are living under siege and violations by the Rapid Support Forces in Al-Fasher for what it describes as more than 500 days. The Undersecretary of the Sudanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Hussein Al-Amin, confirmed in press statements that the scale of humanitarian tragedy imposed by the RSF on civilians in Al-Fasher is part of a series of violations supported by foreign countries. He added that the RSF continues to prevent the entry of aid despite the opening by the Sudanese government of all humanitarian corridors.
After 500 days of siege on Al-Fasher, with more than 1.15 million citizens displaced under this siege and a host of violations, all of this was presented in a documentary film that reflected the scale of the humanitarian tragedy. This film reflects a series of terrorist practices carried out by the Rapid Support Forces militia with the support of regional countries.
The Sudanese Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation stressed the need to impose tough sanctions on the Rapid Support Forces and their backers, instead of merely issuing statements of rejection and condemnation.
I believe the international community, as well as organizations and states working in Sudan, must take a firmer stand with the people of Al-Fasher, because it is neither reasonable nor acceptable for the suffering to continue. What is also regrettable is that more than a year has passed since the UN Security Council resolution calling for the lifting of the siege on Al-Fasher, yet the responses remain limited to statements of condemnation. We want concrete measures, sanctions against the militias and against their well-known supporters inside and outside the region.
The Sudanese army announced that it had repelled an attack launched by the Rapid Support Forces on the southern and northern fronts of Al-Fasher in western Sudan, inflicting heavy losses in both personnel and equipment. In a statement, the spokesperson for the 6th Infantry Division in Al-Fasher, Asi Al-Khalifa, said that the RSF had carried out intense shelling of the city with heavy artillery, but the armed forces managed to thwart all attempts at their advance. She added that the battle ended in a victory for the Sudanese army, forcing the remaining RSF elements to flee south of the city, leaving their dead behind in the streets and alleyways. Local officials in North Kordofan state confirmed that the Sudanese armed forces have taken control of all cities and villages in the region, adding that the situation there is stable and secure. North Kordofan Governor Abdel Khaliq Abdel Latif said in statements that a large number of armed forces fully equipped are deployed throughout the region to secure citizens and the agricultural season. He added that the Rapid Support Forces have no access on the road to enter North Kordofan state.
The militia is now in North Kordofan state, particularly in Rahad locality. This means that it has no way to intervene or infiltrate these two localities, given that our forces have been deployed extensively to the north of Kordofan state, preparing to expel them from Darfur, not only from Kordofan. I believe that there is a number of intelligence officials in this area, even from the forces who came from outside North Kordofan.
The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, confirmed that Sudan is facing one of the world's largest humanitarian crises, with 30 million people in the country in need of emergency assistance. OCHA's Director of Operations and Advocacy, Eden Wozornou, reported that more than 4 million Sudanese citizens have fled their homes amid the ongoing conflict. The E3 group, made up of Britain, France and Germany, have triggered a 30-day window enabling diplomatic engagement with Iran to delay the reimposition of UN sanctions. Yet Tehran has rejected the offer as loaded with unrealistic preconditions. Hossam Barkan has more details.
In New York, tensions over Iran's nuclear program resurfaced at the United Nations, where the so-called E3, Britain, France and Germany, invoked the snapback mechanism under Security Council Resolution 2231. The move seeks to reinstate sanctions unless Tehran restores full access for inspectors, addresses its enriched uranium stockpile, and resumes direct talks with the United States. It also opens a 30-day diplomatic window, extendable up to 6 months, to avert the automatic return of measures targeting Iran's financial, energy, arms, and banking sectors.
Our notification to the Security Council has now triggered a 30-day period. It does not mark the end of diplomacy. Our extension offer remains on the table. We hope Iran will take the necessary steps to address the international community's serious concerns over its nuclear program.
Tehran, however, swiftly dismissed the proposal. Iran's UN ambassador Amir Saeed condemned the E3's conditions as unlawful and reminiscent of demands that should stem from negotiation outcomes, not serve as its opening terms. He instead urged for an unconditional technical extension of UN Resolution 2231, disputing Europe's legal rights to invoke snapback without proper process.
Iran categorically rejects and condemns the unlawful notification by France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. This action sidesteps the JCPOA dispute resolution mechanism. It is an illegal attempt to bring back terminated resolution. It violates Resolution 2231. The E3 have no legal or moral standing to use the so-called snapback. Their notification is null and void.
As the 30-day countdown ticks, full diplomatic breakdown or breakthrough hangs in the balance. Europe maintains its extension offer, betting on leverage before the snapback fully reinstates sanctions. Iran remains firm, demanding unconditional extension and deeming Europe's term unacceptable. With time running short, the UN Security Council may soon become the stage for a renewed clash of diplomacy versus pressure.
An Iranian official announced the drafting of an urgent bill calling for Iran's complete withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. According to Iran's Marin news agency, the deputy chairman of the Article 90 Committee in Parliament, Hussein Ali Haji, said he would submit the bill through the Parliament's electronic system so that it can undergo necessary legal procedures for debate and voting during next week's public sessions. He stressed that this step comes in response to the European Troika's activation of the snapback mechanism to reimpose UN sanctions on Tehran. The Russian Foreign Ministry on Friday condemned the decision by the European Troika countries to reimpose sanctions on Iran, calling on the international community to reject the move. In a statement issued Friday, the ministry said there is no legal basis for the European Troika's activation of the mechanism to reimpose sanctions on Tehran.
We proceed from the fact that the options proposed by the West are unilateral, clearly based on containing Russia, and that those who advocate such ideas are pursuing a path to drag the Kyiv regime into the NATO orbit. In addition, this approach violates the principle of the indivisibility of security, perpetuates Kiev's role as a strategic provocateur on Russia's borders, and increases the risk of the alliance being drawn into an armed conflict with our country. Security guarantees must be based on achieving a common understanding that takes into account Russia's security interests.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry said on Friday that the efforts by Britain, France and Germany to reimpose international sanctions on Iran are a non-productive step that will hinder the peaceful resolution of the Iranian nuclear issue. In a statement, the ministry added that China is always committed to resolving the nuclear issue through political and diplomatic means. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio affirmed that his country supports the European Troika's sanctions, which urge Iran to engage in serious diplomatic negotiations to resolve the nuclear issue. In a post on X platform, Marco Rubio stated on Friday that the decision to activate UN sanctions on Iran is a direct response to its violation of its nuclear commitments.
The E3, France, Germany and the United Kingdom initiated a process to reimpose UN sanctions on Iran. Snapback sanctions are a direct response to Iran's continued defiance of its nuclear commitments. The United States supports the E3's decision and urges Iran to engage in serious diplomatic negotiations to resolve the nuclear issue.
And Algeria has expressed concern over the continued war between Russia and Ukraine, which is causing substantial human and material damage. Speaking in New York during a UN Security Council urgent meeting devoted to the developments in that file, member of the Algerian permanent mission to the UN reaffirmed that the logic of confrontation will only lead to more violence and destruction.
My country, Algeria, has repeatedly expressed its concern over the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. The consequences of this war are ongoing, leading to a deterioration of the humanitarian situation. Many innocent civilians have fallen. Others continue to suffer, including children, women, and older persons. With the continuation of confrontations, civilian infrastructure is also being destroyed, which is having a serious impact on the daily lives of civilians. What's more, information received yesterday noted the destruction of several diplomatic buildings in Kiev following explosions. Algeria reaffirms that the logic of confrontation will only lead to more violence and hostility. That undermines dialogue and negotiations and undermines diplomatic efforts aimed at achieving a peaceful solution, including in the context of direct negotiations, which gave us the hope of seeing a just and lasting solution to the war.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday that discussions among Kiev's partners regarding security guarantees for Ukraine must urgently be elevated to the leadership level, stressing the need for U.S. President Donald Trump to participate. Zelensky said at a press conference that he expects to continue discussions with European leaders next week regarding what he described as NATO-like commitments, expressing his desire for allies to ratify any security guarantees through their parliaments.
In my opinion, we leaders need to engage urgently in order to reach an agreement, after which we can consider military and national security agencies and so on. That is how I see it. Questions like boots on the ground can only be discussed at a leadership level. The question is who is ready and for what?
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in a virtual meeting with a group of European leaders on Thursday, stressed the importance of establishing a clear framework for Ukraine's security guarantees as part of a plan to reach a peaceful settlement with Russia. Zelensky told the European leaders that Ukraine believes Russian President Vladimir Putin is only interested in continuing the war, stressing that Kiev needs a solid foundation for the security guarantees approved by U.S. President Donald Trump and under discussion for the past week. Russia said that Western proposals regarding security guarantees for Ukraine perpetuate the risk of a conflict between Moscow and the West by turning Kiev into a strategic provocateur on its borders. She added that current Western proposals aim to contain Russia. And Reuters reported, citing a source at the Turkish Foreign Ministry, that Minister Hakan Fidan and his U.S. counterpart Marco Rubio discussed efforts to achieve peace in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict during a phone call on Thursday. The same sources added that Fidan conveyed to Rubio his country's readiness to assume its role in the peace process. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. That's a wrap for tonight's program. Thanks again, and have a great night.